Hey guys, it's your grandpa coming to you from South Jacksonville Beach. I'm in between 22nd Avenue South and 23rd Avenue South. It was a tough week for the beach. What's behind me is what's left of the sand dunes. We had Hurricane Ian come through and washed away a lot of the beach, but as you can tell, there's enough of it for me to sit without people walking behind me. That's why I'm up against the sand dunes. I don't want people behind me, walking behind me. And the other day I told you a story that I called The Amazing Spider-Man, and you probably thought to yourself, boy, oh boy, that's probably the most scared you've ever been in your life, when you were hanging from a fire ladder 30 or 40 feet above the ground and almost died. But that wasn't the most scared I've ever been in my life. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even the second most scared I've ever been in my life. As far as I know right now, from compiling all this, it was the third most scared I've ever been in my life. Today I want to tell you about the second most scared that I've ever been in my entire life. Now, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm not a brave man. My motto is that I want to lead a fascinating life and then die in my sleep. One of the things that I've tried to do as a father in my life, when Tom and Frank were growing up, Sam was with us, and the Mather kids, Alex, Becca, and Jim, is to lead the family into multi-dimensional trips. And one of those trips happened in 2002. It was centered around the San Jose, Costa Rica marathon. I was going to run the marathon, and Tom was going to run the half marathon. But for the week leading up to that, we were going to go to Spanish school in a place called Capos. Now, before we got to the Spanish school, they tried to figure out what your proficiency in Spanish was. Courtney and Tom were fairly proficient in Spanish. Courtney was very young at the time. She was too young to go to this school, but we convinced them, hey, there's 4 of us coming. None of us are coming if you don't let her. So she was there with people that were older than her, and she held her own. And Tom took Spanish in high school and worked in restaurants where they spoke Spanish in the kitchen. So he was pretty proficient, but your grandmother and I were not proficient at all. In fact, this is the first time that I ever tried to learn Spanish. So Tom and Courtney were put in an advanced class. Grandmother and I were put into a class that I call Español para Idiotas. And what they did is we were going to do homestays. So they split us up both ways. So Tom and Courtney went to school together. Roz and I went to school together. Roz and Courtney lived together, and Tom and I lived together. Tom and Courtney went to school in the afternoon, and Roz and I went to school in the morning. Well, this was also a trip, because it's multi-dimensional, that we took surfboards. We rented a car and brought surf racks with us and brought surfboards. But I could only go surfing, and I got this wrong. Roz and I went in the afternoon, and Courtney and Tom in the morning. So I would go surfing in the morning, and Tom would go to school. But all the places in Manuel Antonio, Cabos, that whole area, were high tide breaks. So it was going to be low tide for part of the week during the morning, and I wanted to go surfing, and I would go out and try to surf, but the surf was pretty crappy, so it just didn't work. But I had this book about places to go surfing in Costa Rica, and I found a place called Playa El Rey, although when you got there the sign said Playa del Rey. It said that it had epic surf year-round at low tide, but to be cautious, it was dangerous. So I assumed that by danger, and they said something about localism, I assumed by dangerous that they meant that it was dangerous in the water, that there could be rocks out there and things like that, maybe sharks. And I'm not just afraid of heights. I'm afraid of sharks too. My whole surfing life, the entire time I'm out there, I'm looking around going, oh, I don't want to get bit by a shark. And here in Jacksonville Beach, sharks come in pretty close to shore and they feed on the fish. So occasionally people get bit by sharks here. I've been fortunate so far, but hey. So I got to this place, and it said it was dangerous and there was localism. So I took my surfboard off, and then I took the surf racks off and put them into the car and locked the car. I was ready to go down and get in the water, and normally what I would have done is find a place to hide my keys. But this was a wide open beach. The surf was just looking amazing. It was epic. 4 or 5 foot high, breaking nice, gentle breeze offshore. It was everything that you look for. And I noticed 2 things. Number one was a group of white guys on bicycles, just cruising around. Now, this was a place that was undeveloped at the time. There were these little shacks, kind of like huts, that were scattered around right up in the palm trees above the water line. And there was a little dirt road there, and these guys were circling around, and they were looking at me. And then I also noticed a little man with the look of being a native Costa Rican, with no shirt on, and he started to come up to me. Now the guys on the bikes, they just surrounded me, and this guy started to tell me that there were hombres malos. And I was just learning Spanish. This guy spoke no English. But I had a feeling that he was talking about these gentlemen on the bikes who were kind of circling the area. They'd go out of sight for a little bit, then they'd come back, and it's sort of like, these guys are waiting for me to go in the water so they can steal the car or break into the car, whatever their plan was. the man put his hands out and pointed at the keys to the car. And then he pointed to himself. He had his hand out like, and I looked at the surf, and I imagined myself out there, and I looked at the man, and I looked at the hombres malos who were back to circling, and I said, I'm literally between the devil and the deep blue sea. And the deep blue sea might be as scary as the devil. And I said a quick prayer. I said, Lord, I want to go out here and surf. Please protect me. And I gave that man my keys. The surf was unbelievable. It held up for a while so you could catch the wave. I'm not a great surfer. I never have been. I'm a longboarder, so I'm not like carving up the waves. But the man was running up and down the beach, and he was like yelling out to me, although I couldn't really hear him, and he was going, and I was going like, well, but he was digging it, and I was digging it, and I stayed out there for about an hour. I got back, and the guy was jumping up and down, and he wouldn't give me the keys. Started motioning to me to go up to a hut. It was his hut. And I thought, well, he's got my keys, I gotta follow him, so I went up there. And next thing you know, he had a machete in his hands, and he was telling me to get inside the hut. And I thought, well, this is crazy. What's this guy want? And he started going, Coco, Coco, Coco. Now it was 85 or 90 degrees that day. The water temperature was about 80 to 85. I didn't think this guy was going to make me hot cocoa. And I had not gotten up to the lesson where we talked about fruits and vegetables in Español para Idiotas. So I didn't know that he didn't want to lure me in there with chocolate caliente, that he was actually talking about coconuts. He returned in a couple minutes with 2 coconuts with the tops chopped off of them, and he handed me one. We toasted, and I started drinking the coconut water. And he started talking to me in Spanish. And if you haven't figured it out by now, mi español no es bueno. And it wasn't bueno. I'm not very good now in the past tense. No estaba bueno, maybe. Anyway. But he started using words like corazón, el Señor, and Jesucristo. So by the time he got to Jesucristo, I said, this man is telling me about Jesus. And I just got up And I told him in English that I'm a believer, and I tried to tell him that in Spanish. I have no idea if it came across, if he got the message, but I hugged him. I actually sent this man Christmas cards a couple of times, and even though he didn't tell me his name, that's part of the end of the story. I got in my car after putting the surfboard, surf rack on the top and the surfboard on and securing them with the man standing there with the machete, protecting me from the hombres malos, and returned safely to Capos. Got ready for school. I met Roz. We hoofed it on over to the school, and I couldn't wait to tell the story. Now, we were only supposed to speak Spanish in this school, but there was no way I could tell this story to anybody in Spanish. So I went in where all the instructors were, and I said, I have to tell you the most incredible story. And as I started to tell it to them, and I got to the part about the little man, one of the people went, oh, I know him. That's Charlie. He's crazy. He just lives out there on the beach. You know what? If Charlie, that's the way I pronounce it, is crazy, I'm going to be crazy too. Because he knew something that all those other folks didn't know. Peace out.